main idea, big idea, positioning statement as the combination between the user's pains and needs and the brand vision and what they want to be perceived as, etc., right? So that combination, that intersection. Hey everybody, this is ManuFracture, brand strategist and founder of ManuFracture, here today for another episode of Ambitions of an Agency. Today we're going to talk about what to do after a strategy session when you're done with a client, and what do you do with all the information you've gathered from a strategy session. Now, you may be thinking, now I've done the strategy session, I've gone through all this stuff, I just finished a strategy session with my client, the online tutor, and I'm going to go through all the information and start, figuring out what all this information means. Because the ultimate goal of the strategy session is to get insight and then use that insight and turn it into something tangible so that your client can actually compete in the market and stand out in the market further from all the competitors at the moment. So what I found with the strategy session that I did with him, we went through a lot of different stuff and new insights came out of it. The interesting thing about a strategy session is that even though you might get some insights on some things, you might also have some things that the client doesn't know about. Like in this case, he didn't know anything about his competitors. He didn't know anything about how the competitive landscape was since he started his business in 2010. So, that's a good insight to get back, to go and then find that information to go in, right? So it's never that the strategy session is the end-all, be-all of everything. It's not really. In fact, this, like the creative process and the way the steps go usually, they can go back and forth between each other, right? You go back into a session with a client, you talk about, hey, we found this information, da 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 da. Or you go into a session and you're like, well, I don't have enough information from the strategy session. Let me go out and find my own information and try to find competitive research and how to do that, right? And so that's the main thing. And what happens when you want to come to the one main thing that happens when you want to create a good brand message overall and a good branding experience overall, and marketing deliverables that actually sell and create an effect. The only way to do that is to first figure out the seed of all this, and the seed and the root, the main thing that all branding comes from is the main idea, the big idea, the positioning statement, the USP, the unique selling point. Whatever words you want to use, and it's all semantics really, but usually these are the words people use in agency language and also in marketing language. It's just USP, unique selling point, main idea, big idea, positioning statement as the combination between the user's pains and needs and the brand vision and what they want to be perceived as, etc., right? So that combination, that intersection, when those two come and combine with each other, that creates the main idea, the big idea, right? What is the intersection between the client's needs and the brand vision or the company's vision to do something in the market, right? You gotta combine the two things together to create a very powerful main idea, unique selling point, whatever, right? And that's where all the stuff comes from, all the design, all the copywriting, all the social media posts, everything comes from that main big idea, right? And so we need to figure that out first. So I'm going to show you here a couple processes I use to start collating the main idea and start collating, bringing things together really to find out what that main idea could be. The main idea is what I forgot. I forgot something. Yeah, okay. The main idea takes a while to get. It's not something that happens overnight, and it's something that takes some time. Not too much time. If you know what you're doing, it doesn't take that much time. but it takes enough time just so that the thing can happen, right? The creative process happens in the same way, right? You gather a lot of information, you let that information kind of simmer, in there. You try finding out the problem over and over again. You really try, look at it. If it doesn't work and you're really not making any progress on it, then leave, find different sources of information, whatever, right? Because the only two things is going to happen if you have a creative block, so to say, or you don't understand what the main idea is. One, you don't have enough info on the client, on the user, on the market, whatever. You don't have enough info on that. And two, it's really just you're letting your brain kind of to come to that conclusion, because maybe already has all that information, but you have to come and let it have come to a conclusion and what the idea or the main positioning or the USP is going to be. So that's it. So here's the clip. So here's us a competitive research at the moment, and this is what I'm doing with the competitive research. As you can see here, I've nailed it down to two types of direct and indirect competitors. And really, what you want to do from a competitive research is to not copy the competitors or try to be like them, but it's more so how you can be different from them. And really, what you have to do here is to understand, and what Dan Kennedy says, he's a really good copywriter, and you should definitely check out his books. But basically, Dan Kennedy talks about comparable knowledge and competitors. Competitors are also comparable knowledge and things that are usually either are going to be, direct competitors or indirect competitors. So direct competitors are usually people who are within your space and are going to be, for the most part, choices that consumers can actually have and choose over your services. So in this case, it's tutoring centers, personal tutors, pre-recorded courses, and other online tutors. Because he's an online tutor, these are the people he is competing with directly. Indirectly is basically people who aren't just direct competitors, or you may not think they're competitors, but they actually do solve the same problem as you to some degree and may offer some sort of, again, an option, because if the thing offers an option to the user or the target market you're going after, then it's a competitor technically, right? Even not doing the thing, or not even hiring a tutor, or not even hiring someone to do or solve the problem, is an option in that case. So an indirect competitor is to do it themselves, so they gather all the material, do it with their kid, whatever, right? And the cost is free. Or they can go to a public library, which is also free, and they can attend on a drop-in basis, and that also is another choice. So the main thing you're trying to figure out in a competitive advantage is the strengths and weaknesses and what is similar to the client that you're trying to brand, or the client you're trying to position as different, right? So you got to come and look through here, so here's like, Russian math, Kumon, all this type of stuff. These are learning centers, not tutors. As you can see, you go down, down, down. Now talk about tutors. So you pick every sort of business model that could kind of compete with the one that you're doing the work for, your client's, business. And you look at the strengths, weaknesses, and what is similar. Strengths are usually stuff like, high social profile, highly qualified tutors, whatever. Weaknesses are stuff they could improve on, that kind of hinder them, that could be an opportunity there. And similarity, which is basically what did they do the same as my clients, basically. And through, it's like almost like a strength, weaknesses, and opportunities sort of sheet or whatever framework, right? Where you list the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But in this case, you're seeing here that I just write down the strengths, weaknesses. How I get the opportunities and the threats is really just kind of looking at this sort of thing and looking at what's similar. If things are similar and things are weak, first similar is going to be a threat, because similarity then destroys the choice for the client, or the client's client, or the client's user or target market. And weaknesses basically show opportunities where we could improve and how we could communicate our services better. So basically go through this, fill this out, and start to summarize the total strengths, the total weaknesses, and the total similarities, and we can start to map out something. So while I'm doing that, I am also looking at another framework which basically we use, which is called, I wouldn't know what it's really called academically, but I think it's just a positioning axis or positioning graph or whatever we want to call it. And basically what this is, it shows in order, or shows how related to the product or service your client is, and is there a clutter in the market and stuff like that, and if do we need, like, how do we sound new, how is there a possible blue ocean, is there a possible new market, or a new way of saying something that hasn't kind of go under the same thing that our competitors do. And the really thing here is what Eugene Schwartz is another great copywriter. You should pick up his book, Breakthrough Copywriting. Basically, what Eugene Schwartz says is that in markets, you have three phases of market sophistication. You have the first one, which is, that everyone knows about your product. Maybe it's a new product's coming in, and very few people know about it but need it, right? So you're like first into the market. If you're second into market, you still have to compete with the first, but you're not much competition. And the third, which is where everyone is kind of already figured out that there are all these different services, offerings, and they all say the same things over time. And right now, that's what I'm seeing in this market, is that we're in the third phase of market sophistication, where everybody knows what the product is, what online tutoring is, and they're going to make sure that they communicate that correctly. And there's a ton of sites and online platforms that are saying the same thing: quality online tutoring. We pick learning styles. We find the strengths and weaknesses of our clients, blah, 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 over and over again. So there is a point now where the market has not saturated, but it has reached to a point where people know about it, and there are many options and choices for the consumer at the moment. So that's the third phase of market sophistication. And the fourth one is basically when there is no more need for the product, or the product's dead, or the desire for a product is dead. So the main thing here is just kind of map out. As you can see, I already started here. You can take, Russian math, you put it next to personalized and learning system. So basically, the two parts where are really important are to map out the online tutors versus the learning centers, which are also really big. The indirect competitors I'm not going to be worried about at the moment, but the main competitors we are going to be worried about at the moment. So the online tutors are going to be the first. Then the learning centers, which are the in-person sort of centers, group sort of settings. And then you have the impersonal, which is just generalized, given through a range of things, and then a range to personalization. So within these two extremes, there are markets that exist right now in this business model of online tutoring, or tutoring in general. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to map this out, and you can see here I started to do this right here. And when I finish here, basically how you can fill something out like this is, again, you just look, Russian math, you look at your strengths and weaknesses, you go here. Are they a learning center? Yeah, they're a learning center, so they're right around here. Personalization, are they personalized? Yes, they are. They one-on-one tutoring, and they get high results. So that's the positioning graph, so to say. So finishing with that, doing the positioning graph, you can clearly see here that usually one or two things happen when you do a positioning graph. One, you're going to see a lot of outliers, people who kind of work in a blue ocean market where there isn't much competition. And you can see here, like Russian math, Vora Academy. Kumon also has a white space, but I guess that's their own way of doing things. You can see here, but as you go here and you go down into these parts, you see that it starts to cluster, right? And that's another thing you're going to note, is things are going to start to cluster. Different companies that are in the space, do the online education stuff and online tutor stuff, are all going to cluster in this kind of similar place where there's personalization, high results, and they're online. They have great tech, they're convenient, and all that stuff. So they're all clustered here. And right now, my client is right in the middle of this entire cluster at the moment, right here. And so you can see here, this type of cluster is not good because this kind of shows not market saturation, so to say, but it just shows that there's a lot of people in this market doing the exact same thing, and they're doing the exact same marketing and the same communication methods as he is at the moment, and saying the same things and making the same claims over and over again, right? And saying the same benefits are the same thing. So when things are the same, everything becomes noise, no one differentiates, and then this gives complete choice to the client, and the client can pick and choose of which one he wants, right? The parents can choose which one they want. There's a whole bunch of choices there. The aim of branding and the aim of making a great positioning for a company or for a business is to make sure that they stand out in the market, make sure that they do not get grouped in with this industry perception right here, right? They have to be in a completely, either in a new place, a new space around here, or find a new way to say the claim that puts them out of this sort of space at the moment. And the claim at the moment being personalized online tutors, one-on-one, creating great learning styles and creating long-lasting learning effect on a child. Those are the similar claims overall, and we have to make a difference on that. So the next part is kind of gathering all the data, figuring out all the data, and then putting it in correct boxes and really understanding why we did the strategy session in the first place. So right now, after doing that competitive audit, it was interesting to see, and then go back to the brand elements or the strategy session overviews and the frameworks, and what info I basically had put in the frameworks. And this is actually the part where you kind of do after the strategy session, where you've kind of gathered all the information you need here. You've kind of gotten all this type of information about the desired result, the USP, or if you're using whatever framework it is, you're gathering information on some of sort of these things, values, the purpose, etc. And what you do then, and what I've done, and I don't know if anybody else does this, but this is a very important part, I believe, is to organize the data to derive insights, because that's the ultimate goal of a strategy session, is to derive insights. So ultimately, what I do is I like to put a blank piece of paper, or just, for me, I like to just open up a new page here in InDesign and just go through each sort of thing I've got here, kind of put it into context, really go and listen back to the call, and then try to find the intersection between him and his clients. What does his clients need, and what does he want for the company, right? Those two kind of things need to be really clearly defined as to where that intersection is, because where that intersection is going to give you the main big idea, right? And so just basically what I do, I go through the call each time, and then I go through here the information. I take the information, write it down, start to annotate some things like, oh, maybe this could be more specific, or this, how can I dig more deeper into this, right? And the best way to kind of find that big idea is to really be more specific, because if you're kind of going in the general section, and sometimes people happen to do this in strategy sessions, sometimes people go around and they look at something and they think, oh, this is about solving X need, in this case, what is what is tutoring? Oh, it's just to get the child good grades. It's to but what does that mean, right? What is the benefit of getting a child good grades, right? And then going deeper into that. Oh, does it mean they'll succeed in life? What does succeeding in life mean, right? And then going deeper and deeper and deeper into that sort of train of thought so you can actually pull out a real insight, right? Because the very first thing that you're going to pull out is going to be either something surface level or mildly important or surface level-ish, but you still need to dig deeper for the insights. And this is where you come in, where you just come in, annotate, look at all these different things, and just really try to figure out what is working and what is not, and what is the most specific thing you can say that differentiates you from the competition, right? Or from what you're trying to differentiate from. And that's why the competitive audit is good, because it gives you some idea of what you're up against, right? And so what I did here, I go back, I took this piece of paper right here. So I like to do it sometimes in, just by paper, because paper can get my thoughts down pretty quickly. And then I translate to this type of format where I put all the logos of the different companies that are part of the possible landscape, and then just dot them down here to show them the client later, and show them in a more clear, simple visual format. Tell them what the competitors are, what the indirect competitors are, and go. And now this is the part where, after you've kind of dug through all of this type of stuff, after you've dug through all this type of stuff, you get to the refined insights part, which is, again, taking the insights and refining them, right? This is a process called clustering, or finding similarities, or finding, let's say you have something that is to do with teaching the details and looking at nuances. Teaching the details and looking at nuances are two things, and they're very similar to each other, and they can be compiled into one thing, like, the fundamentals of learning or something like that, right? Because they kind of have similar attributes. What can you combine them into to make a singular attribute, right? And this is very helpful with the brand elements exercise, because you see there's a lot of stuff here, and I like to do it in the session to write it all down. But ultimately, either if I get to the end of the section and I have to pick 3, or I have to do really prioritize which ones are the best, I make sure that I do the thing called clustering, which is just like, what's similar, how can I group these things together into a singular format, right? And I do that either on the strategy session, or I can do that when you're done with the strategy session. I find it most effective when done with the strategy session, but I do it sometimes in the strategy session itself. But you can but I feel it's better to do it afterwards and look through with a fine-tooth comb and whatever, and really look for those kind of connections, right? It's kind of like when you play that game, what is it called? That memory game or something. Not memory game. Is it a memory game? Yeah, it's the memory game, where you kind of need to see the two parts and see if they both match up, and they make a whole, then they disappear or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if anyone knows what I'm talking about, but it's a memory game where you basically you basically have to memorize where these different spots are, these cards flipped over, where the similar ones are. So when a cat is similar to another cat, and then you have to memorize that, and you have to put that together, and that makes a whole, that makes a pair, right? And that's the same thing here. You have to make a pair of different insights and then combine them into one thing, so that they become more clearer, and then you have less information, and you're cleaning out the data, and you're cleaning out what's quality, basically. And so yeah, so you see how you do, and you just do this willy-nilly. You just create all this different type of stuff willy-nilly. You just take this out, put this here, listen to the callback, and that's how you do it. And then when you're done here, you can go to the refined insights part. This is just a part I like to add, because it just puts everything into perspective of what's important: the visual style, the verbal style, the values, and the USP and the why. I believe those are the 5 most important parts of any brand, is these 5 most important parts. The verbal style, which is basically the copy, the verbal style, which is the copy, the visual style, which is the design and the visuals, and the values, the things that they value, and it will affect the tone of voice, or affect the style and tone of these things, and the USP, which is the singular thing that everything branches out of, right? The singular main idea is the main idea, right? And then the why is internally, for internal purposes, and whatsoever. Is another interesting thing I've done is just to put things new, only, easy, anybody, safe, predictable, and big and fast. And these are just this is just a made up thing that I did, just in case, because these are things that help me really define what the USP is and what it can be, and also what effective parts of copywriting would be for the website or for any sort of collateral or deliverable that the client has. And this is basically from a guy named Kyle Milligan. You just look him up, Kyle Milligan. He's a copywriter, and basically what he says is that the brain only responds really well to these three things: new and only, things that are new give hope, and everyone is looking for a new thing so that they can be given hope as to what's something new, or that hope will solve their problem. Hopefully it will solve their problem, right? It gives them hope, and that's something that's really powerful. Every time we see something new that, you know, and we're aggravated on a problem, you know, this something new offers us a new hope because it's different, right? And that leads to difference and onlyness, right? Onlyness, which is such an important part of branding, being the only person to own this category, right? Easy anybody, it's about breaking all barriers and objections, just saying this is for anybody. It is incredibly easy, you can do this without a problem. And then safe and predictable, which is just being able to be safe, and that being safe means predictability, and predictability is a good thing because you know what's going to happen next, so there's not any uncertainty there, and that's a big, huge thing for people. And big and fast. Big, we look at things that are big, and big ultimately includes fast, because big things take over over a space of a period of time really, really fast. So big can be, big equals to fast, right? So big things like, I helped 100 people, I helped 1,000 people, 1,000 people have rated me, this. But these are just general examples, but you find your own, and you just separate sometimes the insights from this strategy session into that, and that also helps as well, right? And then the story brand framework is just for you to kind of know how the whole story goes, right? How to structure everything and where everything is, right? The character, this, that, the guide. You know, it's basically based off a hero story, right? So basically, you have a character, your client, or the target market you're trying to market to, and they have a problem, and you're the guide, and you position them as a guide, and they have authority, credibility, that's all the proof, social proof, the things they've done, the successes they've had, and who gets them to a plan, which is the process, and calls them to action, the call to action, to schedule a call, whatever, right? And then the character transformation from struggling to this to become this, right? And so it really helps to kind of put into perspective the whole big picture of the overall strategy of what you're trying to do and how you're trying to position the client. But this is not something you show to the client, because the client will be overwhelmed by something like this, right? This is, all these frameworks are going to be more simplified into more different things. So like here, as you can see, the competitive odds is just this and this and this, and the brand DNA, the USP, is just one singular sentence and one singular, and the why is one singular thing, and the values are three things, right? So it's all simplified so the client can clearly see what this whole thing is about. So I think this is some good stuff to add, and this is the stuff that I do before I present to a client the new strategy, and this is how I compile the insights into different things. There's a whole process in how to create ideas and big ideas, and I won't go too much to that, but that's my process so far in regarding noting down the stuff from the strategy session and organizing it into a way the client can understand that is valuable to them. Okay, so that's it. I will see you on the next one. Hope you enjoyed this. If you liked it, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these videos, how I'm showing the creative process, and I will see you on the next one.